elevating the discussion while talking about the things that matter most. You're listening to Society and the State, Life, Liberty, and Your Pursuit of Happiness. Now, your hosts, Connor Boyack and Brian Hyde.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 68. We are talking to Zak Slayback, who you're going to learn more about in a moment. He's kind of branching off from Praxis. We interviewed, you may remember, Isaac Morehouse from Praxis. We'll link to that episode on today's show notes page, which is going to be societyandthestate.com/68. But Zak has kind of branched off, expanded his focus, and carved out a little niche of his own, trying to help especially young entrepreneurs try and find their toehold in the market and how to market themselves. So I've been watching what Zak's been doing. He spoke at a conference I was at some months ago, and kind of been in orbit for a little while. And I've seen the content he's been putting out, and there's a lot of relevance there, a lot of ideas we can extract, not just for young entrepreneurs, but for people just getting into the market, people wanting to reinvent themselves, people wanting to improve their station in life. So Zak, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Connor, thank you so much for having me.
So Brian and I here, we're chatting a little bit about some of the questions. I'm just going to get us started. Brian's got several great questions he wants to throw at you as well, because I wasn't planning on starting this way, but let me offer this up. So we're working on our latest Tuttle Twins book, and this one is all about entrepreneurship. And in the book, there's a page where the twins are learning, a lot of people just like having the comfort and safety of a 9-to-5 job and having the steady paycheck. And that's fine, right? But that's a lot of people's personality. On the other hand, you have a lot of these more entrepreneurial-minded people who are willing to assume risk, who don't need the security blanket of a constant paycheck, who don't need to only work 9-to-5, but they're willing to invest a lot more, risk a lot more for the potential of a lot more reward. It seems like the people you're talking to, you're looking for the more entrepreneurial people, but does your message apply? And are we also trying to talk to those people who are in a 9-to-5 who maybe are a little too comfortable? We want them to learn how to market themselves and how to reach out and kind of carve out a new identity or a new opportunity for themselves?
Well, let me just start out by saying I think that this division between entrepreneurship and a safe 9-to-5 job and trying to think of it in terms of what's risky and not risky is entirely a false dichotomy. There's nothing so risky as tying your entire life to somebody else's ship. That is exactly what I would come back to time and time again. It doesn't matter if you've been working for many years at a large multinational corporation like Procter & Gamble, or maybe like a medium-sized family business that's well known in your community. You need to have some kind of way of controlling your own ship, controlling your own destiny, and controlling, honestly, your own brand at the end of the day. A lot of my clients, the ones that I work one-on-one with, are people who they want to start businesses because they want to live their lives in a certain way, right? They want to start what are often called lifestyle businesses. So they want the flexibility of being able to say, hey, I'm going to go work in Argentina for a week, right? And not have anybody say, you can't do that. But even if you are working a typical 9-to-5 job, there's a lot of ways where you could benefit from controlling and understanding your own position in the marketplace, whether that's starting a side business or deciding that you want to. One of my clients worked at a very large, well-known materials company for many years, and he wanted to quit his job to homeschool his son and make funny YouTube videos with his son. Nice. So, he was someone who was very much attracted to security. And then he actually wrote a fantastic article the other day where he pointed out that the first large company he had worked for, which is well known for making ketchup and comes from the Pittsburgh area, was acquired by another company and downsized, and his manager was fired. And this was like 5 years ago. He met his manager as an Uber driver like 2 weeks ago. The guy that was formerly his boss is now an Uber driver.
Wow.
Just 5 years going on. So no, I this is not just for people who want to, take the risky, billion-dollar business idea.
That's interesting. So what I'm hearing from you is the 9-to-5 is widely perceived as being kind of the secure position, comfortable position, but in many ways it's a false sense of security, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a false sense of security in the sense that the locus of control, like how you get to decide where your control goes, is pretty removed from you. You know, whether it's like the 1990s kind of office space environment where they bring in consultants and the consultants decide to downsize the company, or if it's just the fact that, you know, your success is based on something like quotas that the company quasi-arbitrarily sets. Your success, even in a 9-to-5 role, can always be augmented by understanding and positioning yourself properly in the marketplace.
So I've got another question I'm going to kick over to Brian here, who I know has a few. So in one of your little bios on the internets that you've written up, you say, I teach the career skills that school never taught you. And, you know, we hear all the time about this conveyor belt idea. People just kind of go through the motions, right? They go to school, then they're told they should go to college and get a degree, then they go find a job. And a lot of people just go through that assuming that they're being prepared, assuming that they're being adequately trained and educated so that they can have a fulfilling and prosperous life. But if you teach the career skills that we never learned in school, for those of us who went through public school, give us an idea of what some of those career skills are. What are you talking to your clients about and saying, well, yeah, look, you're a adult already, but you're not ready to adult because you haven't learned to do X, Y, and Z. So what's that X, Y, and Z?
Well, I think that we don't have to take this highly debatable position on whether or not college or high school or any form of school prepares somebody well for getting a job, because I think there's actually a good argument from the historical perspective that the schools are specifically designed to get people jobs, but it's a very specific kind of job, right? A very specific kind of corporate job. Schools are not very good at training people to build careers that they enjoy and find fulfilling. They might be good, and I think this is debatable, at helping people get a very basic job. But it's not uncommon to meet somebody who, is 4, 5, 6 years out of school in the job that they got right out of school, and they're miserable. And they don't know why they're miserable, and they don't know how to escape that job. So some of these skills are simply like being able to communicate confidently, both confidently over voice, confidently at events with strangers, and in writing. One of the things I run into more often than not is somebody that was a fantastic writer in school, as in they always got A's, is a terrible writer in the real world. Right. So the communication is easily one of these categories that this falls into. Understanding how to fail and understanding how to set effective goals as well. Keep in mind that for years, school sets goals for you, right? You need to hit the goals that the school sets. And those are, getting certain scores on standardized tests, getting good grades in general, moving on to the next level of the game, the next grade, from grade 7 to grade 8. And this means with a school that has a scarce amount of time and a scarce amount of resources, it's actually in their interest to not train you to set goals that are outside of the school, right? So a lot of people come out and they have no idea what they want to do, and they have no idea how to pursue what they want to do or figure out what it is they want to do. Mm-hmm. And one of the really important concepts that has become more and more clear over the last couple decades from like clinical psychology and from psychotherapy in particular is that what helps somebody feel a sense of fulfillment, feel a sense of belonging in the world, and avoid any kind of sense of despair is not achievement of goals, right? If you've ever set a massive goal and then you got it and it didn't have like any particular purpose or reason for you, you probably caught yourself thinking, that's it? Where's the euphoria that I expected, right? Mm-hmm. Like I see this very often with people who they want to get into prestigious university and then they get in and then it's like, well, why did you get into that prestigious university? What was the purpose, right? Or they graduate from the prestigious university or they get the prestigious job. Rather, it's progress towards meaningful goals that helps people feel like they're progressing and that they're growing in a way that matters to them. So basic communication, and I mean that both verbal and written communication, for lack of a better word, I hate the word networking, but networking, when I say that, people know what I mean. Networking without being a sleazy person, without having to go to a networking event, being able to meet the people who will actually add value to your life and you will add value to their life, and being able to set effective goals.
Zach, I know you talk about, we have a tendency sometimes to leave value sitting on the floor. I'd like you to expound on that and talk about how do we do that?
Yeah, the reality is that everybody has a scarce amount of time, right? And in a lot of organizations, we have to make trade-offs we have to accept trade-offs about the kinds of work that we decide to pick up, right? If I am a manager or I am a business owner, there is a whole list of things every single day that I can do. And the reality is that I should be doing the things that are the most important and the most urgent for the organization, in which my skills and my experience are most highly tailored, right? So this might be like some kind of negotiating or some kind of sales, something like that, some kind of management. But there's still always other things that I can be doing that day. There are other tasks that can be done that are important for the organization. And I might hire somebody that works in, say, sales that will pick up some of the sales work for me. But there's often a lot of this kind of work that falls by the side that is otherwise valuable, that doesn't fall into anybody's specific job title. So one of my pieces of input that I give people when they're starting out a new phase of their career, whether they're a young person coming right out of school or they're, say, a parent whose children are grown up and they want to go back into the workforce, is look for the value that's sitting on the floor, right? Find what I call a very busy person, and everybody says they're very busy, but really someone whose time is very, very, very valuable. Often these are business owners. They're people who own some kind of project, right? They can be artists, they can be entrepreneurs, they can be researchers of any type. And find their problems, because very busy people always have problems. And problems are a sign of something that they know is there. It's very rare that they don't know that these problems exist, but they don't have the time or the energy or the resources at this moment to go solve that problem, right? Mm-hmm. So approach them and propose that you solve the problem. Really easy, simple example is a lot of businesses don't have what's called a lead magnet on their website. So if I go to a business website, I should hear a positioning statement from the business, which is something we can talk about when it comes to marketing yourself as well and how you can use that in your own life. But I should see a positioning statement from the business that qualifies me as being somebody that should or should not be here. And then there should be some way for them to capture my contact info, because otherwise I'm just kind of a stranger who saw their website, like somebody driving by on the highway, right? And it's one thing to just have a place on your website that says, hey, give me your email address. It's another to say, give me your email address and I'll give you, the five immediately actionable items for all business owners who want to reach parents in central Utah, right?
That's something of value, right? There's got to be an exchange.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So if a website doesn't have that, one of the things I encourage people to do is, if you're just trying to get into the workforce, especially in something like marketing or working at a startup, is build that for the website and send it to them and tell them that you'd like to talk to them about it. Mm-hmm. And the vast majority of the time they'll say, sure, we'll at least be willing to talk to you about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the key. Is a lot of people coming out of school especially have not been trained, have not had experience learning how to provide value. It's a very passive experience, right? You're told what to learn, you're told where to go, you're told what to do, and you just do those things and you're along for the ride. That's why the conveyor belt analogy works so well for so many in thinking about how the school system is set up. But when you're looking for providing value for another, that is a very proactive thing. As you point out, you have to
absolutely.
Go
and it's uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable, especially if you've never had experience doing it, right? And so I really like that example where you do something for free. The best advice I've seen given, especially to younger entrepreneurs, is offer to work for free at the company of your choice, right? Like you've got very low cost of living, right? Maybe you're still at home. You can get by for a little while. Offer to work for free somewhere for a month or two. And good grief, like if someone came to me here at Libertas Institute and said, I have this skill set, I think you have a need, I will do this for free for a month just so you can see how it'll go. In fact, I don't need to be theoretical about this. I had an ad agency that I was talking to about doing some ads for our children's Total Twins books. And they said, look, we've got some ideas here, but we don't want you to take it on faith. Give us access to, your account, and we'll go in there for 2 weeks and show you what we can do. And I was like, oh,
Great.
okay, awesome. You know, 2 weeks of free work. So they jump in, they start tinkering. And then, of course, I like it enough. And the sly thing with the whole arrangement is they've already got access. All the friction is gone. I don't need to find a relationship. There's no investigation. Like, it was very, very easy at that point, with even just minimal effort on their part to show value, for me to say, yeah, let's keep this going and see where it leads, because all those walls had been knocked down. And so I really...
No, because to you, to find somebody to replace them, there's more cost involved than just whatever they are going to negotiate as pay, right? Like, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about this, and they asked me, you know, in your philosophy, are you saying that people should always work for free? And I said, no, I think you should work for free to get your foot in the door, right? And then what you want to do is you want to make it that the opportunity cost of letting you go is higher than the actual cost of just bringing you on. And there's a lot involved in that cost, a lot involved in that cost beyond just paying you, right? There's whatever it costs to pay you. There's also to find somebody else who is competent and who can convey that they're competent in the way that you were able to convey that you're competent. And then all this institutional knowledge that you pick up in this month, like these systems that this organization set up for you. Right. As soon as you can, yes, you should negotiate some sort of pay. You shouldn't work for free as long as possible. Right. Not a fan of that, but working for free is what allows you to leverage that low opportunity cost in the first place.
So a lot of our listeners are not at that younger age where perhaps they can assume, you know, that level of risk and work for free for a while. They've got kids, they've got mortgage, they've got whatever, right? And so you said something earlier that you wanted to revisit, and I'd like to bring it up now really quick, and that is a positioning statement. So businesses should have a positioning statement explaining why they exist, what their purpose is, but you were suggesting that individuals should have a positioning statement. So are you envisioning something like, you know, the little blurb on their LinkedIn profile? Tell us what you mean by that and what the purpose and opportunity there is.
Yeah, I want to clarify that a positioning statement isn't something like a mission statement. A positioning statement is that, you know, this business does X for Y audience through Z product or service, unlike, you know, competitor or whatever, right? So individuals can have these, absolutely. I have one on my website, which I've been A/B testing a couple variants of for a while, but it's something along the lines of, you know, Zak Slayback helps ambitious young people learn the skills to increase their reach, grow their businesses, and accelerate their careers, right? And what does that statement do? Well, that statement does a couple things right there. It disqualifies the people I don't want to talk to as potential customers. Right. Like, the reality is my experience and my knowledge is less applicable to somebody who's a retiree, right? So if a retiree lands on my website, they can sign up for my email list. Great. Maybe they have a grandchild or a child who would be better served by my services. But really what I'm looking for are ambitious young people. And by young people, I usually just mean like under the age of 35. So they don't have to be like 18. Similarly, if I land on somebody's website, I should be able to tell pretty quickly what it is they do. I don't want to have to spend 20 minutes putzing around this person's website to figure out what is it that this person does, right? Even if it's like, you know, Jane Doe is a mother and small business owner in Arizona, right? At least now I know something about her, right? Like, she first identifies first as a mother, which tells me something actually really important about her, and then that she's also a small business owner, right? Everyone should have their own website. This is one of the basic things that I teach people, and I'm actually putting together a small resource on this right now, is you should absolutely own your first name, last name.com at the very least, right? And if you have a fairly common first name, last name, then there are usually variations on this you can buy. And then that website should be simply the positioning statement. And I always encourage people to have a blog because writing is actually considerably less difficult than people think it is. But the positioning statement tells me who you are and who should listen to you and who shouldn't listen to you. Both of those are very important, because what you should try to do when you set up your own brand, for lack of a word, is you want to set up what's called an inbound funnel and an outbound funnel. The outbound funnel is, you know, Connor, if you and I didn't know each other and I wanted to get in touch with you, I would email you and I could send you a link to my site and you'd be able to tell something about me based on the link on my site, right? I could send you some blog posts I've written that are on my site, and you can poke around. You'll find more information about me than if I just say, hey, my name is Zach, and I just tell you a little bit in the email.
Right.
The inbound funnel is if you're poking around and you're specifically trying to find people who do what I do, you will find me and you will be qualified as a potential reader or somebody who should be interested in what I'm doing based on that statement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And I think, the whole point here is that it requires a little bit of work, right? It requires being proactive. It requires setting these things up. I think a lot of people still are very much in this notion of, I lost my job, they downsized, or I'm not liking, so I'm going to go find a new job, right? And it's just hopping from one place to another.
And then they send out resumes. The first thing, if you're looking for a job, the first thing you should do is not redo your resume. Please, please, please.
All right.
That is one of the things that frustrates me more than anything.
Build on that. So if not that, then what?
You should identify the kind of job you want first, and then you tailor your resume or whatever resources that you'll be sending over to that company based on the kind of job that you want. Instead, what a lot of people do is they look at their resume, they update it, they tailor it, and then they decide the kind of jobs for which they might be qualified based on that resume. The reality is that unless you have a very, very specific type of knowledge, say like law or medicine, you're probably the knowledge and experience you have is probably flexible enough that you could make a lot of different lateral moves in your career, right? So identify, 5 companies you want to go work for, see if they have any open positions. If they don't, you can still try to get in with them. And I have a script on my website that someone can download to email someone to try to get in with them. And then you tailor your experience and your knowledge based on what their needs are. The last thing you want to do is operate from this perspective that it's all about you, right? And this is what I really dislike about working on your resume first is it conveys to you yourself, and it conveys to the business person with whom you're working that it's all about me, my experience. And it's like, no. You want to be thinking of it in terms of what value can you add to this organization you're going to. Yeah. And then the resume is just like icing on the cake. It's like, I can do X, Y, and Z things, and here's some validation that I can do that based on my past experience in a laterally similar industry.
Well, and it shows that that person cares about the organization. So as an employer myself, when I have applicants who just do the bare minimum of what it says on the application page, right? Send us your resume, cover letter, one writing sample. Like, okay, you get a bunch of that, and then I have to sift through it and figure out, who's qualified and who I want to talk to and everything else. But man, when I have the people who, add me on LinkedIn or reach out on Facebook Messenger to say, hey, I wanted to, chat with you for a quick second. I've got this skill or I've got this idea. Does that seem like something compatible? Immediately they're rising to the surface because they're trying to do more than just the minimum and set themselves apart. And it doesn't take a lot of effort.
No, and it's not hard at all. That's the thing.
I mean, when we talk about marketing yourself, good grief. I mean, like spend literally 5 minutes thinking about something and 1 minute executing, and you're immediately rising above so many other competitors. That's the crazy thing here.
The reality is, even the website stuff, I realize that can be intimidating to people who have never built a website before, but it's actually really easy. You go to namecheap.com and you buy a domain name on namecheap.com, and that's $10.80, something like that. And then you go to something like thisistap.com, which is a nice WordPress server site, and you start up a free WordPress site there, and then you poke around in the dashboard on there to do a little bit of the positioning, and then you've got a very basic blog, and it took you, $15. If you upgrade to the full tap, it's $5 a month. It took you like $15 and maybe half an hour of time.
Amazing. You've actually kind of answered one of the questions I wanted to ask, which was when it comes to tooting your own horn, or at least positioning yourself. I think sometimes we have a tendency to lapse into false humility, and I was just wondering, how do you distinguish between false humility and being realistic about the value that you bring to the table?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I like to say that young people have nothing to offer in order to leverage the importance of opportunity cost for them. But the reality is that if you have any set of experience, whether you're a parent or you're a teacher or you're a small business owner or you were a salesperson or you did door-to-door sales. I love seeing when people have done door-to-door sales. You have a unique set of experience that does bring something new to the table. I remind people of that all the time. And the reality is simultaneously is your experience is unique, and there are people who are in similar enough situations that they will gain value from hearing what you have to say, right? So let's say you are a parent who does door-to-door sales, right? And based on your background, based on your community background, your religious background, whatever it might be, you've got a specific set of knowledge and a specific set of values you can bring to the table and that you can write about based on that and your experience doing door-to-door sales. But there's also a lot of people out there who they want to succeed at door-to-door sales. So you can talk a little bit about that. And then you can combine the two worlds that you sit in to write about, the things you learned from door-to-door sales that are applicable to parenting, right? So now you've captured the parenting demographic on top of the door-to-door sales demographic. The reality is not everybody, very, very, very few people sit in one circle, right? We are usually, when we think about, ourselves, we are usually the amalgam of many overlapping circles. All you need to do is you need to take two of those circles that overlap, and you need to think about what experience do I have from there, and that's the experience you can talk about. And two, the reality is as well, if you've ever met somebody who's built a large or reputable personal brand or business brand, they're usually not that much smarter than you. In fact, sometimes they're not smarter. Like, this is something that I consistently find somewhat reassuring, where I will meet people who have built very impressive businesses around themselves or very impressive personal brands, and I have a client actually here in town who I've talked to before, where anytime things get frustrating with him, he and I just kind of sit back and I remind him, I'm like, this person can do this, and you're a lot smarter than this person. So you should be able to do this as well.
Yeah, and sometimes it's dumb luck or other, life circumstances that might propel that person in the position they're in. But I think you're right to point out, from Brian's question of the humility angle, like, in a way, it's very intimidating to see other people, and they look very prideful and assertive, and they know what they're doing. They have all their ducks in a row, and look how far ahead they are. But so when I talk to youth groups, the message that I consistently share is, we have no idea what we're doing. We adults, we pretend really well. And it's very intimidating to be a youth and to figure out life and adulting and how do I do all this stuff and how do I get ahead? How do I market myself? And I tell people, I'm leading now 2 nonprofit organizations, and I have no clue what I'm doing. There's no manual. There's no book. Every single day, it's all about challenges and choices. It's all about confronting, what's in front of you and figuring out if you're going to react or if you're going to be proactive and try and circumnavigate whatever challenge there is and do something different. That's what you need to be prepared for. I'm really glad that we were able to at least touch on that. School, unfortunately, does not prepare us very well. Public school for
I love that you brought up the reactive versus proactive element as well, because I think that school is a very reactive environment, right? You are a raw resource that is put through this machine, right? And the machine acts on you. Where the reality is, if you want to actually get ahead in the world, whether that's in your career or just in your personal life, you have to be proactive about it.
Yep.
And that's not something that you're trained in doing. And the other thing too that I think is important to keep in mind is, especially if you're uncomfortable with appearing prideful or feeling prideful, keep in mind that in an economy and in a world where there's nobody standing over your shoulder holding a gun to your head saying that you have to listen to this podcast right now, you choose to do the things that you're doing because you believe that they add value to your life, right?
Right.
The same is true of the readers of your website. The same is true of people who decide to reach out to you. It's because they think that you have something to offer them that they decide to read your website. So there are certainly days where, I'm sitting right now in front of my desk and I've got a whole wall full of sticky notes with all these blog post ideas that I need to follow up on, where I sit here and I think, how can I write about this stuff with my age and my experience? And then the reality is I have thousands of people who read the blog because they find it valuable. And if I stopped writing, I would be doing a disservice to them.
Good point.
So I am really doing them a service. And so long as you can find your niche, which is just the overlapping circles of wherever you come from, you are doing the people who read your website or come across your work or reach out to you or decide to speak to you a service. You are serving them.
That's a fantastic point that we've talked about in past episodes with entrepreneurs, that it is very much a service model. You're fulfilling a need, you're helping other people do something cheaper, better, quicker. And so that's a great point to connect to marketing. So often we're kind of gun shy, right? Brian talking about humility, we're worried that we're going to appear boastful and prideful, but in a way it's getting your service out. You can't serve people if they don't know where you exist, what you do, and how you can help them. That's a great way to kind of flip it, and I'm glad you were able to touch on that here at the end. Zach, we're going to link to your website on our show notes page, which is societyandthestate.com/68 is the episode for today. So listeners can find more about you. They can see your lead magnet and the value that you're providing to people there. I was clicking on that a couple days ago and seeing the stuff that you're offering. So thank you for joining us today and helping our listeners understand how they can market themselves.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Society and the State. For show notes, archives, and more great content, visit societyandthestate.com.